Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Let's do a quick sound check once again. If you can hear me loud and clear, please type in the question chat box. We also encourage you to use the question chat box throughout the webinar to provide comments or to ask questions. And we will do our best to answer them as we go along. Welcome to the non-public point of contact bi-monthly support webinar. Today on a very special topic, we have invited not just SEDS points of contact, but also other non-public point of contact and leadership to participate in today's webinar, which is focusing on creating a local education agency non-public school memorandum of agreement to support student success. Today's content will be presented by Edgar Stewart, who is the non-public monitoring manager, and his colleague, Sharon Powell, who is a non-public monitoring supervisor. My name is Annette Bartlett. I will be assisting with the webinar as well. Are both of you guys muted on your computer? A lot of people are saying that. Mm-hmm. Today's webinar, we're going to start with an introduction, purpose, and overview of the non-public and LEA's relationship. Then we're going to talk specifically about elements in the memorandum agreement, how to effectively implement the MOA. We'll take time to look at a case study and also provide you with a sample MOA, and we'll wrap up with announcements and reminders. And this webinar should conclude at 11 a.m. Now, before we get started, I would love to find out more about our audience. So I'm going to ask you to take a poll question right now. So please select any of the above that apply. You can select more than one choice. What is your current role relating to non-public points of contact? Are you the SEDS point of contact? Are you the non-public number 1 or number 2 overall contact with OSSE? Are you a non-public leader that oversees your programs? Are you directly involved with compliance for DC students? And maybe perhaps you're a service provider. Please take the time to vote. Select all that apply. A few more seconds to vote. Great, thank you for your vote. Here are the results. As you can see, a lot of you are involved directly with compliance. Several of you are the actual SEDS point of contact, and a fair amount of you are other types of points of contact or leaders. Great. And I would like to ask you another poll question. Currently, how many students that are from DC attend your non-public program? So as you know, the students remain enrolled in a DC LEA, and they attend your program to receive services. Thank you for taking a minute to vote. Great, as you can see, we have some of everything today. All of you have at least one student, and there's actually a fair amount of you that have a large number of students from DC, which is great. This webinar will be very helpful. And then a related question I would like to quickly ask: how many DC LEAs do you work with? This is important to know for us, because we want to know how often you're having to interact with the LEA. Do you have 10 LEAs that you have to reach out to on a constant basis, or perhaps you only have students from DCPS? A few more seconds to vote. Great, thank you. As you can see, most of you have multiple LEAs that you serve, meaning you have to manage multiple relationships with LEAs to serve those students. And now I'm going to turn the time over to Dr. Edgar Stewart to present the content of this session.
Okay, good morning. So I wanted to start with just a short overview of the discussion in group norms. So we're all here for the same purpose, to be able to think about how to better serve non-public students. So we encourage you to be open to the new ideas that we are discussing here today, and be open to different perspectives. Consider what we can achieve together. Your feedback, be considerate and constructive in the feedback that you provide. Also reflective and respectful. In this session, what we will be doing is really going over with you, and by the end of the session, you will really learn how to consider and use an MOA to be able to stage effective collaboration through the clarification of the roles, expectations, and timelines between the non-public school and the LEA. We will also be reviewing some examples of barriers to effective collaboration that we have seen in the context of our monitoring, our site visits, our our student file reviews, where non-publics and LEAs are working together in ways that could be strengthened by something, a vehicle like an MOA, to be able to really lay out the expectations and the timelines and who's responsible for what. So we'll be going over some of those examples, but also generating ideas on how to solve or refine the barriers to collaboration through the use of an MOA. And then finally, you all will receive tips on drafting an effective MOA. So first, let's turn to looking at the client-provider relationship, where the non-public school is the provider or the vendor, and in that role, they serve District of Columbia students from various local education agencies under both IDEA and the Certificate of Approval regulations. If the standards are not met in terms of adhering to IDEA and COA regulations, one result can be that non-public schools receive fewer referrals from the clients, which in this case are the LEAs. The LEAs, as the client, really are in the role of sending their students to non-public schools to serve them in ways in which, at the present time for the students' needs, the LEA cannot serve within the LEA. LEAs, as a client, should be engaging in ongoing progress monitoring, and where there are concerns for their students in terms of IEP services or documentation, LEAs should be raising those directly with the non-public. And if those concerns aren't met, LEAs certainly should be reaching out to the non-public monitoring team also to assist in that process to help facilitate an effective outcome. In terms of clarifying the roles and responsibilities, we see here that LEAs are, as I said, responsible for student progress monitoring for all of their students at non-public schools, which should be an ongoing process where LEAs are looking not only at IEP timelines, evaluation timelines, annual reviews, but also ongoing academic, social-emotional independent living, any area where a student is having issues that has been outlined on the IEP. The LEA is also responsible for correcting any student level noncompliance that's identified from our annual process of conducting LEA desktop reviews. It looks like we're getting some feedback from at least a couple of folks. Let's do another sound check, because it looks like some folks are not able to hear us. All right. So sound check if you can hear me. Okay, great. It looks like maybe a couple of you are having some issues. You might try to turn your volume up
I'll chat with them
on your computer, and also Annette will be able to try to offline help you just chat with her. Finally, LEAs are responsible for conducting triennial evaluations. There is a process by which LEAs can work with non-publics to get evaluations completed at the non-public school. For any of you who are interested in that, we can connect you with Yvonne Smith on the non-public invoice verification unit to get some more information about how that process goes. Some of the roles for non-public schools include serving the students' IEP needs, but also being responsible for any associated documentation, which includes incident reporting, attendance notification. Also, the non-public is responsible for scheduling and conducting IEP meetings, as well as documenting students' quarterly progress. So, in the next couple of pages, there are more elaborated responsibilities with regard to OSSE's role, the LEA's role, and the non-public schools role as well. But in the interest of time, we're going to kind of skip through those and really kind of get into the meat here in terms of looking at the areas to consider in developing a memorandum of agreement. So this is not an exhaustive list, but areas that we've encountered through our various monitoring processes that we see issues of noncompliance come up, issues where there has, really examples of ineffective collaboration between the non-public school and the LEA, which lead to a variety of issues for students and IEP documentation. The first area, looking at data systems, ensuring that the non-public school and the LEA are clear about who the non-public SEDS POCs are, so that as issues come up with SEDS access or documentation or assigning caseloads, that there really can be a system in place to quickly and effectively troubleshoot any issues, raise in terms of flags to OSSE through the OSSE Support Tool, any challenges that are encountered, in the SEDS process in terms of user issues or access issues. But also, the non-public and the LEA should be considering training that might be needed for non-public SEDS users, and whether all of the non-public staff who are serving DC students have the appropriate SEDS access and level of proficiency to engage in compliant and timely IEP documentation, related services documentation. So these are things that the non-public and the LEA should be considering under the data systems. Additionally, other data systems that should be looked at and considered include SEDS, which is a special education attendance tracking system, where non-public should be documenting students' absences, both excused and unexcused absences, at least twice a week in the system, and LEA should be reviewing that documentation to ensure that their students are not having issues of truancy or AWOL or abscondment or school refusal in residential settings. Also, the tow transportation system is another area where, again, non-publics and LEAs would be well served by ensuring that students' transportation needs, both during the school year and also for either summer school or ESY services, are addressed in a timely manner, and the LEA and the non-public are clear about the rules there. In the next area, IEP coordination, ensuring that IEP timelines, both annual and triennial, are adhered to, and well in advance of those, that meeting invitations are sent out to the appropriate parties. How those meetings get coordinated, who convenes them, who sends out invitation, who's responsible for the document upload after meetings, again, would be an area that there are various relationships that non-public schools have with different LEAs, where those relationships are defined in very individualized ways. In one non-public school, it may be that the LEA wants to drive that process themselves, whereas with another LEA, with students at that same non-public school, may want the non-public to drive that. And again, it's really through the process of having active conversations, hopefully through an MOA formal document.
Okay, another quick sound check. If you can hear us now, please let us know. Apparently the sound just dropped off. Please let us know.
Okay, so it looks like we're back connected.
So you can still talk there, and it'll be fine here. It'll pick up fine.
It sounds like there's an echo. How about now? Okay, there shouldn't be an echo now. We've turned off sound. It looks like we're back on track now. Okay, great. IEP documentation, again, progress reports. One of the areas where our monitors see significant issues with what appears to be lack of communication or ineffective collaboration is in the area of progress reports, where, as we know, draft progress reports that are generated in SEDS, if they're not finalized within 30 days, they essentially disappear. Oftentimes when we've encountered draft progress reports in the course of our student file reviews, what we see is that when we flag that as part of our monitoring and student file review, we will go back later and those draft progress reports have not been finalized. And what that suggests to us is that the process by which the LEA and the non-public finalize those is not clear. And unfortunately, what that leads to, from our perspective, is non-compliance with regard to quarterly progress reports. But it also means that students' progress reports are not documented in a way in which the LEA can use that to ensure ongoing progress monitoring. So again, it's an area that we encourage you to have really clearly articulated expectations for the roles and responsibilities about who drafts the quarterly progress reports, in what timeline, who finalizes those documents, so that the LEA and the non-public are on the same page. Service trackers, same holds true for service trackers. Incident reports are obviously conducted by the non-public school after there's been an incident that involves either a physical restraint intervention or a seclusion. And the non-public school is responsible for really adhering to the COA regulations with regard to ensuring timely upload, notification of the LEA with a copy of the written report, as well as a copy to the parent, and then working in collaboration with the LEA to schedule follow-up IEP meetings. So again, this is an area where we see various kind of breakdowns in an understanding of the expectations. While the non-public schools are responsible for drafting, documenting those incidents and doing the uploading, the LEA certainly could be in a position to articulate their expectations that uploading occurs within 24 hours and, really as part of their ongoing progress monitoring, ensure that, they're reviewing students' records to determine whether their students have been restrained and whether they got that information timely. So we already kind of talked about emergency behavioral intervention, so I'm going to kind of move forward. Evaluations and reevaluations that take place. There's in that process the parental consent for evaluation, timelines around conducting the triennial evaluation, which may at times be challenges as some non-public students may be out of state. And again, that's a process by which the LEA can coordinate with the non-public to get those evaluations completed while the student is attending the non-public school. But again, what it starts with is a shared understanding of the expected timelines and the roles that both the non-public and the LEA will play in ensuring that those evaluations are completed. It looks like we have, is that a question for us?
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
The very first.
All right, so we have a couple questions. Can we define reporting responsibility for IEP follow-up? Great question. If you, what we will do as part of the materials that we send after the webinar, we will include the emergency behavioral intervention and positive behavior support tip sheet, which really outlines in much more detail than we're able to cover here, the responsibilities for IEP follow-up. But briefly, the COA regulation articulates that the IEP team, which both members of the LEA and the non-public are both responsible as members of that IEP team, that IEP team is responsible for convening an IEP meeting to consider the use of a BIP and or an FBA within 10 days of a student being involved in an incident involving a restraint or a seclusion. So really, again, the expectation is that the LEA and the non-public convene that meeting. For who actually convenes it, again, that's, those are individual conversations that LEAs and non-publics develop the expectation on that process. And really through an MOA would be an ideal vehicle to make that more clear. But as I said, we will provide some more detailed information in the tip sheet that we'll forward to you as well. An additional question. The question is, if there have not been any breakdowns in communication or concerns with the LEAs that a non-public school works with, would OSSE still recommend an MOA? Really, I think that's up to each respective diet of a non-public school and an LEA to come up with. If you feel like you have a process that's working right now and that there are not issues that lead to issues with transportation, issues with service delivery occurring timely, and the documentation being uploaded in ways that are accurate and timely and complete. I'd say if it's not broken, don't fix it. But at the same time, we know that there are changes with staff both at non-public schools and LEAs, and where there's a break in continuity, new folks may come in and not be as clear about what those expectations and those practices have been. And so an MOA is one really area to be able to use as a way to memorialize ongoing expectations and practice so that new folks can come in really with that as a foundation. All right. Statewide assessment. Here we see that there is consideration of LRE annually. Again, this is a collaborative process that occurs at least annually during the IEP annual meeting, but also should be considered ongoing in ways that make sense for the LEA and the non-public. And again, how they articulate that really is an individualized decision. With regard to statewide assessment, we see here that there are a lot of steps involved in preparation and training leading up to the administration of now the park or the alt, where it's incumbent for non-publics to have information both from OSSE and directly from the LEA to ensure that their staff receive the appropriate training, that appropriate security checks are conducted on the system, that there is verified rosters. So all of that, again, are areas that being able to articulate in an MOA, potentially that's developed over the summer at the beginning of the school year to really set the stage for the year, lays out those expectations. So by the time, the winter comes upon us, the non-public really is well situated to take part in any preparation and training that needs to occur so that when statewide testing occurs in the spring, the LEA and the non-public are not playing catch up. Next, the area of secondary transition. This is an area where OSSE has been focusing on really increasing the level of compliant practice for students who are attending non-public schools who are of secondary transition age. We've been seeing some concerns in terms of compliant practices. Recently, we convened a webinar with the focus of secondary transition in non-public schools. Stay tuned. I think in the next LEA look forward, you should be seeing information about another training that occurs in late February. So it will be a repeat of the training that we conducted in December. Other areas to consider for MOA development, as I already talked about, the LEA and the non-public SEDS POC collaboration. Really, again, I can't emphasize enough that this is an ongoing, active relationship that really is at the foundation of ensuring compliant documentation ends up in SEDS by all of the relevant stakeholders. At the non-public school, that would be related service providers and special education teachers or case managers. And oftentimes, again, we see access issues or lack of understanding of the role of the non-public SEDS POC at the really at the root of compliance issues that could be best addressed if their non-public SEDS POC and the LEA SEDS POC are actively collaborating. So again, we really can't stress enough that this is an area for non-publics and LEAs to be having ongoing conversations about to clarify roles and timelines and responsibilities. And along with that, ensuring that any orientation that needs to take place for new non-public and LEA staff and who are responsible for non-public students, that occurs. OSSE, our colleagues in training and technical assistance, have a very active and robust calendar of SEDS trainings and other kinds of trainings that have compliance implications, have special education practice implications. So we encourage you to make sure, as LEAs and non-public schools, you're sharing that information to make sure that your staff are well aware of opportunities that they can participate in that help to ensure that DC students are served effectively. Okay, so before we go on to looking at effectively implementing the MOA, I just want to pause and see if there are any questions. Oh, no questions? Okay. All right, so we'll go on. And I will turn it over to my colleague, Sharon Powell. Okay, sound check again. Just want to make sure you're able to hear us and there's no echo. No echo. Great, sound is clear. All right, thank you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Sharon Powell. And before we have a look at the sample MOA, I'd like to recommend as a first step in setting up the MOA is to agree to some communication routines. So setting up a time and a place, perhaps some monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly meetings where where you as the non-public can meet with the LEA to discuss the implementation of the MOA once it's created. So, so in order for this to be successful, we recommend that points of contacts for both parties be established. And again, here agreeing on the best communication model, as well as planning for regular communication and setting up the frequency. So as we know, even with the best laid plans, communication breakdowns can occur. So it's helpful, we would recommend up front to agree upon how you'll attempt to resolve issues that might arise. So the MOA can be used as a guide to clarifying the expectations in the areas that Dr. Stewart just outlined. It's also recommended that a plan for discussing the issues and identifying which parties will take and circulate notes, for example, and when it's necessary to escalate a concern to OSSE. So first we'd like to review a case study. So I'll give you a moment to review the following text. And I can just read through it as well. So a 16-year-old student with a disability recently transferred LEAs in DC and is now enrolled in a public charter school and attending a non-public school in Maryland. The student's current IEP will expire within the next weeks, as the student's triennial eligibility determination is also coming due on the same day. 1 second. Okay. His previous LEA had arranged to have the staff test him at the non-public this month. While the student has been attending the non-public, he has been truant on several days, and while at school has been involved in several altercations that necessitated the school to use physical restraints. The student has reportedly been receiving behavioral support services as well as speech therapy, although the LEA learned from the non-public that the non-public does not currently have a therapist on staff and has not had one since August of last year. And the speech therapist is new to DC and has not been granted access to SEDS. OSSE is scheduled to conduct student file reviews at the beginning of September to determine the LEA's compliance with federal and district special education regulations. A preliminary scan of several of the student files in SEDS revealed that several draft progress reports and missing incident report forms and no service tracker documentation. So a couple of the questions we'd like to consider based on the facts from the previous slide. What are the immediate compliance implications, compliance concerns, and based on the facts presented in the previous slide, what are the most important compliance concerns to review between the parties, and which parties, either the LEA, the non-public, or both, has a role in remedying them and preventing future incidents from occurring or future breakdowns from occurring? Based on your review, would you be inclined to address any additional areas in this MOA between parties? Okay, there we go. So one of our concerns here when a student transfers LEA and their IEP is will become expired, that the non-public and the LEA agree to convene a review of the student's IEP within 30 days. Another concern which comes to light is that the student has been truant for several days. So according to the COA regulations, the non-public school's responsibility is primarily with the notification to the LEA that after 5 and 10 days, after the student's accrued 5 or 10 days of unexcused absences, that the LEA is notified within a certain time period. And then it's really on the LEA to take the lead and to initiate attendance intervention protocols, such as examining the root causes for the student's truancy, setting up a school-based student support team so that a attendance intervention plan can be drafted, and notifications to the appropriate agencies if necessary. So we're also concerned that the student has been involved in several incidents involving the use of a physical restraint. Again, going back to the COA regulations, the non-public school is required to notify the LEA that an incident has occurred, and that's within 24 hours, and not only notify the LEA, but to send a copy of the incident report to the LEA or to upload it into SEDS and to let the LEA know that it is available there. Another concern that came to light is that the student has not been receiving their services and the school does not have the appropriate providers on staff. So that's a case where we would want the non-public to reach out to OSSE so that OSSE can follow up and ensure that the school has sufficient staff, sufficient number of providers on staff to provide those services. Okay, we frequently, when we're on site visiting non-public schools, learn that providers do not have access to SEDS, or that the non-public SEDS POC is not able to create new accounts or doesn't know how to create new accounts. And so we want to ensure that the non-public and the LEA know how to set up new accounts so that providers can log their services in SEDS. And another concern that was revealed is that the progress reports that were completed are only in draft form and then will disappear from SEDS within 30 days if not finalized by the LEA. So another area that can be included in the MOA is to setting out who is responsible for reviewing the progress report and within what time frame, and ensuring that it is finalized before it disappears.
So there's a question. Please repeat the last thing you said about DCPS responsibility concerning truancy.
Okay, so those regulations are in the DCMR under Chapter 2100, and there are there is a whole set of requirements that are put into effect once a student has reached those critical points, the 5 days of the unexcused absences and the 10 days. So we can provide that. Also in
the COA regulations, there are
it's referenced. Right?
Well, there's also there's detailed information there as well about non-public's responsibilities with regard to attendance notification that you can also reference, and we can certainly send you those. Last couple of years ago, we did a webinar that included observations from our student file reviews, along with covering the regulations and some suggested practices to improve attendance notification. So we'll send you the link to that that TA resource that's on the OSSE website as well.
So the COA regulations require non-public schools to, as mentioned, notify the LEA when an incident involving the use of restraint has occurred, and to send that report to the LEA. Now, the LEA, if the LEA does not receive any reports, might assume that no incidents have occurred, and that might not be accurate, that there might be some problem with the process, with the school's ability to upload the form within the required time frame, or to notify the LEA that it is there and available for review. So the LEA, one part of the MOA, the LEA and the non-public might decide on a monthly basis. The non-public will proactively report out on the number of incidents that have occurred, and then the LEA can ensure that it does indeed have copies of all of those reports, and that it can review those reports to ensure, for example, that the incident, that the emergency intervention, the physical restraint, was used under emergency circumstances, and that it was implemented appropriately, etc. To do their student progress monitoring and their due diligence to ensure that students are safe. And then also, if the non-public is the LEA, in order to do their progress monitoring, oftentimes we recommend that the LEAs generate a report within SEDS which shows which services have been provided, whether the number of minutes that were prescribed were actually delivered, and whether that's reflected in the student's permanent record. And so the non-public and the LEA, again, can set up, through the memorandum, points where they can review those reports to ensure that students are receiving their services, since they are not on site in order to do that. So, so here we have the breakdown again of those areas that you just saw highlighted in yellow. And again, so based on the facts on the previous slides, which are the most important compliance concerns to review between parties? And so, again, we have this set in this order.
No, these are some of the ones that we highlighted. There may be others. But again, as you look at this case study and you think, okay, if we were to encounter this particular situation, how would we analyze the concerns? And based on the concerns that we identified, what would we put in place to ensure that they didn't lead to issues of noncompliance, and that students were getting what they needed with regard to their IEP services?
And which party, the LEA, the non-public, or both, has a role in remedying the concerns and preventing them from reoccurring in the future? So again, that's a discussion that needs to take place and might vary from non-public to non-public, from LEA to LEA. Okay. So in the interest of time, we're moving forward to the sample MOA. So this is an MOA that was created between in this case, so between LEAs and CFSA. So so this is a sample MOA which includes the elements that are typically included in an MOA and can be modified for the purpose of creating an MOA between you, the non-public school, and the LEA.
just also let them know. So in the handouts on your interface, this is one of the documents that has been uploaded. So you all have a the full copy of this sample MOA. So you should probably access it to see in kind of greater detail, the content of this sample MOA. So we realize that this is not a great really resolution in our slide, but you all have the full version of this as well.
Mm-hmm. And so for this first section on the introduction, this could be modified to read the LEA and the non-public school, collectively referred to here as the parties, entered into this memorandum of agreement for the purpose of establishing a collaborative partnership to ensure the implementation of ESSA as the Elementary and Secondary Education Act as amended by ESSA, regarding the provision of FAPE in the LRE to students with disabilities who are placed in non-public schools. So authority under the MOA, overview of goals and objectives. So here under section 5, programmatic obligations and responsibilities of the LEA and the non-public, and here the subsections under coordination and points of contact, so the points of contact, whoever is going to be designated as the key point of contact between the LEA and the non-public, that can be established here or memorialized here, as well as how the two parties have agreed to establish, maintain, and implement the policies and procedures. And then, and so, and here in the last section, the date when the MOA will go into effect can be inserted, and the parties who, the stakeholders who are party to this agreement. So that is the sample MOA. Are there any, we have a few more minutes, are there any questions?
I'm going to switch over.
So turn off your microphone. Change it over to my screen. Mm-hmm. All right, we are wrapping up. I just have a couple announcements and reminders before we close out. So first of all, a reminder, non-public SEDS points of contact, you are in charge of making sure all of your staff have a SEDS account, and it needs to be a SEDS aggregate account. Doesn't matter if you only have students from one LEA at this time. Either way, it needs to be an aggregate account because you might get students from another LEA at any time. So you need to have that aggregate account set up and ready to go to add other LEAs as needed. LEAs are not the ones that will set up your SEDS account. Do not ask the LEA to create a SEDS account for you or your staff members. Instead, you as the SEDS point of contact have the responsibility on behalf of your staff to come to OSSE and request a SEDS account for each staff member. And you do this through the OSSE Support Tool. Then once the accounts are set up, then you go reach out to the LEA to ask for access to specific students. OSSE cannot grant access to specific students within the site. You have to work together with the LEA Special Ed POC to make sure you can see each student in SEDS from their LEA that you serve. And if there's any issues with seeing specific students, the LEA will come to OSSE for help. You should not reach out to OSSE for assistance with seeing specific students within SEDS. And as a reminder, you do have access to the OSSE Support Tool, but you should never send a request directly to OSSE for a specific student. you need to contact the LEA to address that issue in SEDS where you cannot see the student or something else is wrong with the student's file. Then if the LEA is not able to resolve the issue with you, they will reach out to OSSE to ask for additional support. Within the OSSE Support Tool, because you are a non-public SEDS point of contact, you should always be selecting non-public as your issue type. And then once you select non-public, a subcategory menu will appear where there are a variety of different categories where you can narrow it down to the issue you're experiencing. And routing your ticket, setting up your ticket this way will make sure it's routed as quickly as possible to the correct person on the OSSE team to address the issues you are having. If you do not have access to the OSSE Support Tool, yet you are the non-public SEDS point of contact, you need to email OSSE and ask for an OSSE Support Tool account. And you would email the data team. So you would email osse.dartraining@dc.gov. Again, if you do not have an OSSE Support Tool account, please email osse.dartraining@dc.gov. Let them know, hey, I'm the non-public SEDS point of contact. I need an OSSE Support Tool account. Now, to find out about upcoming trainings, there is a Data Systems Training Registration page. This is where you will see trainings such as SEDS Train the Trainer and a special type of SEDS Train the Trainer for related service providers. There will be some trainings held in March, and this is where the registration links will be added. So be sure to check out this page as it gets closer to March. Now, just so you know, there's a lot of other trainings on this page that have nothing to do with you and your role. So you can ignore all those other trainings on other data systems. Just look for the ones either specifically for non-publics or that have to do with SEDS. And today's webinar, along with all other webinars for non-public SEDS points of contact, are archived on the Data System Training Teams page. You can see down at the bottom of this page that the webinars from November and September are already archived here. Today's webinar will also be archived here. In addition, the SEDS resource site, we will continue to archive resources there as well. Statewide assessments are coming up. This table is for your reference, so you are aware of all the different statewide assessments happening this spring and that you are ready to go for those. I want to talk, here's the testing window. As you can see, NAEP and WIDA are the first ones coming up. The alternate assessment, MSAA, coming up at the end of March. Then we have Health, Park, and DC Science. Depending on the age of your students, again, this table can help you remember which grade takes which test. You need to be, somebody at your non-public should be in close contact with the test coordinator at each of your LEAs to make sure that you're getting all the right training, that make sure your students are registered for the right test, and of course that they have appropriate accommodations. If you would like a training or a refresher on how to select appropriate accommodations for your students, how to document them in the IEP, how to change them in the IEP, and how to make sure you are ready for making sure those accommodations happen on the assessments, check out our recently broadcast webinar recording on 2017 assessment accommodations for students with disabilities. You can find that and other testing resources on this website. Okay, now we're done. If you have 1 minute to stay on the line, I would love to hear from you, your experience today. I have a couple poll questions. So the first question is, I had a positive experience in this training. A 5 means you very much agree with this statement, and a 1 means you strongly disagree with this statement. Thank you for voting. A few more seconds to vote. Okay, thank you. The next question is, overall, was this an effective training? Do you strongly agree it was effective? You agree, neutral, disagree, or strongly disagree? Please take a second to vote. Great, thank you for voting. And the next question, please rate the overall course content and training materials that were provided today. So not the presenter, but the actual content and the materials that were provided today. Thank you for voting. And now please rate the presenters of today's materials. We really appreciate your feedback so that we can improve for the next broadcast. Great, and the last two questions are free response. So you type these in the answer. Type your answers in the chat question box. What were the strengths of this session and how could it be improved? This could be anything from the time, location, materials, or the presentation, the topic. We also would love to know what additional training or professional development you require to strengthen your practice. We're always looking for new opportunities to provide technical assistance so that you can fully serve students with disabilities from our DC LEAs. Now, this is the conclusion of the webinar. We encourage you to continue to type in the chat box any feedback you have on this webinar, any suggestions for future trainings, any additional questions. And in the meantime, I'm going to show this contact information for our fabulous non-public monitoring unit. Today you heard from Dr. Stewart and from Sharon Powell. They always welcome your direct questions by email. They'd love to hear from you and work together with you. This concludes the broadcast. We will stay on the line for a few minutes and answer your questions individually in the chat box if we are able to, and if not, we will follow up with you at a later date. Thank you and have a fabulous